The Office of Eclipse Herald is a regional office in the Ansteorran College of Heralds that oversees heraldic activities, education, and services for the middle third of the Kingdom of Ansteorra. Eclipse Herald is responsible for selection and support of local heraldic officers in Bonwick, Elfsea, Glaslan, Greywood, Steps, and Rosenfeld. The requirements to apply for this office are the following. You must be a current member of the SCA and be able to provide your membership number on the application. You must have regular access to email and be able to log into and check your Kingdom-provided officer email regularly. You must have regular internet access and be able to access several SCA Herald-centered websites, including Oscar, the Kingdom College of Heralds website, and Senna. The applicant skill set should include communications, proactiveness, initiative, an ability to learn and ask questions, solid administration skills, ability to manage paperwork, delegation, coordination, and teamwork. Eclipse Herald, like most warranted officer positions, is considered to be a 2-year term of office, although applicants can step out early if necessary, or if planned for in advance. What would you consider some of the high points of your time in office?
It seems trivial, but I really like it when I would get multiple applicants for a local heraldic office. If it isn't just one person that was somehow talked into putting in for this office, and that's the only applicant you have to choose from, there's not a whole lot you have to work with. But when you have multiple applicants, then you get to kind of dig in and talk to them and actually interview for the position, and find who's going to be the best fit for that office. It sounds weird, but it's a nice, really nice thing to have a choice.
What would you consider some of the low points in your time in office?
The biggest challenge is just making sure that all the reports, which now go through the website, which is a wonderful thing, but sometimes some heralds have issues with the website. So I always give them the option of sending me an email directly of their heralded activity for the next month. So that'll help me when I have to send up quarterly updates to Star.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges I faced, and I remember it very clearly, there's a group that no longer exists today. But there was a time that their local heraldic officer was failing to report on a monthly basis. And there's a process in the administrative handbook by which failure to report gets escalated if it's consecutive months in a row of not reporting. And in trying to reach out to them, their seneschal, anybody I could get a contact with, I was not getting a response from the Herald. And ultimately, I had to report that upline to Star Principal Herald. And finally, it came down to the point of me telling this person, I said, I would like to ask you to step out of this office, or we are going to be forced to remove you. And I didn't want anyone to face that consequence of being forcibly removed from an office, because that can be very demoralizing in a volunteer organization. We try to encourage our volunteers to do your best, be communicative with your uplines. If there's problems, let us know what's going on. We're here to help. But if you're not reporting and you're not communicating and you fall off the grid, we don't know as your upline what's going on. If you have mundane issues that you need to address, just tell us that. We'll work with you. But when it comes down to it, the worst thing I had to do was kind of make that position known to the heraldic officer of, if you don't resign, you will be removed. That was, as a regional, that was the worst thing I faced.
One thing I would add, and this is just for the other question I would get is, where is my device that I submitted 6 months ago? Or how can I find out where it is. And that's where I would show them how to track their device, with the IOLIs and the what is going on there, the calls, and also, using the known World Heraldic website about letters from Laurel and things like that. There is people want to know where their information is. I hate to say it, they're really lazy in trying to find where to go for that. So, but they always ask the local herald, and in most cases, they don't have any idea. That was the most time-consuming part, was trying to show them, and I was happy to do it, but that was the most time-consuming. And depending on how deep they want to go into research, it would also, it could take some time, but that's okay. I mean, but it's a matter of signing up, getting, the necessary access in some cases.
On a month-by-month basis, what were your major responsibilities?
Make sure that I had collected all of the local heraldic officer reports that at the time were on a monthly basis. I would keep a spreadsheet by which I would track when those reports were due. 2 weeks prior to those reports being due, I would email all of the locals and remind them, your report is due in 2 weeks. Please get it to me by this date, because my report as the regional is due, I think it was like 5 days after that. So it was critical for me to get their reports so I could then turn around and compile them, annotate them, make any notes that needed to go up to Star in my report. And then I would kind of keep track of a kind of health status of the local groups. And I would just color code red, yellow, green of what I felt that local group's heraldic officer status wise was. If they were all in the green, then everything in my region is good. If there's yellow, there's some issues that I'm keeping an eye on. If there's a red in there, it's a potential problem. We may need to address it.
So the month by month, you need to collect a report or a status heraldic activity for every group that has a herald in your region. And if you don't get a report, then you need to follow up with the local seneschal. And if there was a past herald, that herald either by phone or by email, to make sure they're still within that group. They're still and you have to track membership, of course. But that's usually just a spreadsheet. It's easily done. It only has to be done once a year. But tracking reports is not difficult. It's just, it can be if there's a change in office or their life issues start to happen with the officer, and that's not different from any other office. And but tracking the reports is not, as I said, it's not difficult. Usually one phone call or one email conversation, and I get the information I need. It's not difficult at all.
What other officers did you work with directly?
Most regularly, I would talk to the local heraldic officers and Star Principal Herald. Second to that, I would talk to Treasure Herald for educational purposes, because I was big as being the regional office is very much an administrative office, but I also kind of took it on to be a deputy educational office. Treasure Herald might not be able to go to all the regions in the kingdom, but I can at least oversee the education of my region. So quite often I would work with my locals and Treasure to make sure that they had the classes available to them to learn what they wanted to know.
Well, that would always be the herald. of each local group. If you're talking down at the local level, it would always be the Herald. Second would be the Seneschal. Any other office would be if I'm not able to contact the Seneschal. Sometimes I do have to reach out to the Chronicler, who usually knows all the officers because of their local newsletter, who is active, who's not, and they have contact information or emails.
What fraction of the job of Eclipse Herald would you say involved skills like names and device research and submission paperwork?
Not a whole lot. I would say 10% or less involve that. And it would only come up when a local herald is having an issue, or a submitting herald in your region has reached out to you and said, hey, I'm having an issue. Can you help me with this? And that's when you could either go ahead and do the name and or armory research to make sure that things are kosher and will pass, or you can reach out to someone else in the kingdom that has that knowledge and pull your people together that way.
Maybe 1% of the time out of 100%. Most of the times when I was asked a heraldry question, it was not about actually looking up heraldry. It was about doing an emblazon. And in that case, I wouldn't even give my best guess. I would direct them to one of the Facebook groups, like for baby heralds, and I would ask them to describe to me in an email. And then if they don't have access, I would publish that to a Facebook group, ask for help with an emblazon, and then pass that information back to them. That's usually that's usually all the questions I get is about how do I word what's on this device. That's usually the question.
As the regional, probably no more than 25% to maybe 30%. And like, again, that's more of the people who are submitting, have things in progress, and don't know, they might not be heralds, and they don't know where those tools reside to follow up on the status of their submissions. And if for whatever reason, particularly with groups that are no herald option, the regional is kind of the overseer for those groups for their submissions. So quite often they would come and say, hey, I submitted my stuff at Gulf Wars, and I haven't heard anything. Can you help me find out where it is in the process? So as the regional, yes, that is my job, particularly if they're a no herald option group.
If you were to handpick your successor, what skills are you looking for?
Being detail oriented, so you can check on reports, membership, communication, and the belief and follow-up. So not just communicating by email. One of the things I did as regional is I would actually try and talk over the phone with my locals to make sure they had they realized that they could call me on the phone if they had an issue. If you can't reach me by email, you can reach me by phone. So I would encourage that for my successor as well. It's just another communication avenue for a local to have. And really so detail and follow-up, and the ability and wanting to communicate.
Somebody who is proactive in communicating. Somebody who doesn't necessarily wait for there to be a problem, but will reach out ahead of time to get feedback from their local deputies, or from their regional if they're talking upline, saying, hey, I've got a problem, can you help me? Versus me waiting and then having to go and say, hey, I'm not getting anything from your office, are you having a problem? It's really nice, especially if there's a problem, be proactive in reaching out. You know, if it's an issue, bring it up then before it becomes a problem, so we can address, you know, the smaller thing before it snowballs into becoming a big thing. That's definitely one of the skills. For a regional office, you don't necessarily have to know the ins and outs of book heraldry, but it's good to know the tools that are available to heralds and submitters for tracking heraldic submission processes, whether that's through Oscar or the ordinary and armorial, laurel letters of acceptances and returns. Where to find help is you are the resource for the locals. If you know it, great. If you don't know it, you should be able to know where to find it for them. So having deputies, either like an emergency replacement or a local deputy who's interested in pursuing the regional office, making sure that they have an understanding of where those tools can be found.
Does the Eclipse Herald need to take the Herald's warranting class?
Yes, absolutely. They will need to know the expectations and roles and duties of the local heraldic officers. If they do not have a concept of those expectations and duties, then there's a more likely chance that the regional office, Eclipse, won't understand what's going on and what needs to happen within those duties for the local to be successful in their position.
What resources are available to Eclipse Herald if they need help, have questions, or just want to learn more?
There are many things that are available. So the first one is the College of Heralds Administrative Handbook, and that is just on how to perform your duties, what's expected. There's a brief outline in there. The second is if someone comes to you with name or armory research, you should be able to identify those people who have that knowledge, and you can talk with them. There are also numerous classes out there. We have the unofficial Ansteorran textbook that also outlines more in depth, you know, the duties and things of a local heraldic officer. There's my office. You can always reach out to Star. I will always be able to be there as a resource to help as well. And then there's Facebook, where there are many groups out there for heralds. There is Discord. There are many channels out there for heraldry, and not only in Ansteorra but known worldwide. So we can make those resources available to you.
What are your expectations of the person in the Eclipse Herald's office?
My expectations are that they will oversee and be administratively responsible for the activities of all of the local offices for the Herald in their region, for however many groups there are. If a local group has chosen a no Herald option, they are responsible for making sure that the heraldic needs of that office are being met, whether that's in person, that they go there and have a heraldic night or a consultation table or what have you, or if it's getting local people who want to do submissions in touch with a consulting herald, not necessarily the Eclipse themselves. It also means that you are going to ensure that monthly reporting is done on time and done well. And it's also to be a cheerleader and a leader in the heraldic community for your region that tells us about the good things and also is proactive, so that if there are any issues with local heraldic officers or anything in the heraldic purview, that you take steps to minimize any detrimental fallout that could possibly happen. And I also want you to be a cheerleader, to encourage people to be more active and more interested in the heraldic arts. And Those are my expectations. And communicate, communicate, communicate. Up, down, sideways, everywhere.
If someone has questions about the office, who are some people you would suggest they talk to?
Some of the people that I would recommend that you talk to for the role of Eclipse would be Richard Fairborn, Sir Mahdi. You can reach out to me, myself, or any other regional officer that is out there, past or present.